Scott got kicked off.
We have two board members that are participating remotely tonight, and we've got one of them on Zoom, Mr. Joe Hubbard, and we're waiting to, we lost the signal with Mr. Scott Alexander, so we'll give him a minute here to try to get him logged in. I apologize for the technical inconvenience.
Can't tell what's going on.
I see only Joe on the screen, so I'm assuming.
Joe, can you hear us all right?
And Joe, you're muted if you're going to try to respond to that question.
Pam, can you mute Joe?
I put ask to unmute.
Oh, you asked, okay.
I think Mr. Alexander's trying back.
Great.
Scott's iPhone has entered the waiting room. Admit,
Great.
the second time it did that.
Technology's great when it works. Awful when it does not.
Well, I shouldn't have banged the gavel to call to order. I thought we were all.
Well, back in my day, when the tin cans and strings, it worked.
Scott's not even getting a cell signal on that. He said it was about to rain last night. And you have a quorum, so you can.
Well, he's in an area that doesn't have the best internet.
Joe, could you unmute yourself and confirm that you're there? And if so, we may have to start without Scott, hoping he can join us. Is Joe there?
Yeah, Jason's working with him.
He's there? Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and anyone who may be watching online. Let me start off by reading our mission statement. Here at Center Grove, we develop knowledgeable, confident, responsible citizens through inspirational and innovative learning opportunities. As I stated before, we have two members who need to participate remotely tonight. Looks like we have Mr. Joe Hubbard, and we're hoping that Mr. Scott Alexander will join us. But let's get it kicked off. If you would, Mr. Russell, could you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And because I'm going to be speaking a lot tonight and I'm 6 feet away from everybody, I will be foregoing the masks, but if I end up within 6 feet, I will put it back on. First, let's look at the adoption of the agenda. Has everyone on the board had the opportunity to take a look at the agenda? May I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that the agenda for the July 23rd, 2020 regular meeting for the board be adopted as presented.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Russell and Mrs. Toomey. All those in favor of the adoption of the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Joe, we can't hear you yet. Jason, are we working on that?
Joe's an aye.
Oh, great.
Joe's an aye.
I think what we'll probably do is we will do a voice vote here in the room, and then I'll individually ask you. That way we make sure we get you, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Next, we move on to the next item on the agenda are public comments, and I see no one has signed up for public comments tonight.
What time?
I'm sorry?
This gentleman said he signed up for public comments.
I apologize. Please forgive me. My fault. Sorry.
Oh, thank you for correcting us. Mr. Williamson? Yes. I ask if you could come to the microphone so we can record your statements.
Thank you for having me here and letting me talk.
And Mr. Williamson, before you get started, just want to tell you it's board policy that we give you 3 minutes to speak on an agenda item, and I see from what you want to talk about tonight, it is on the agenda. So I turn the floor over to you. Thank you, sir.
My name is Michael D. Williamson. My reading glasses on. By way of introduction, I'm a nationally best-selling author. I'm a #1 Amazon bestseller, and you can find my books in every bookstore in the English-speaking world when they're open. I'm an immigrant and a 25-year retired veteran of the Army and the Air Force. During my last deployment, I was hazmat control NCO, and my element handled environmental management for the primary evacuation clinic for the southern half of the Iraq theater. So I'm reasonably educated regarding toxins and air filtration. I've consulted on emergency preparedness to various clients, including DoD elements and TV productions for Discovery Networks, the Science Channel, and the Outdoor Channel. My wife's first degree is biology, specializing in epidemiology, so she's also fairly knowledgeable. I've got some background here. Per the World Health Organization, there is currently no evidence that wearing a mask, medical or other types, by healthy persons in the wider community setting, including universal community masking, can prevent them from infection with respiratory viruses, including COVID-19. Per the National Institute of Health, not only is there no viable mask to stop COVID, I quote, cloth masks actually increase your odds of infection by slowing air exchange, unquote. There's even the possibility of contracting Legionnaire's disease, which is deadlier than COVID. I have links for all of these. Per the CDC, the N95 is the minimum required mask for any protection against SARS-CoV-2. And they say outside the healthcare and medical transport settings, the CDC does not recommend the routine use of respirators. Most people who develop SARS become infected through contact with other people who are ill with SARS, not by breathing contaminated air. If a person does contact the SARS virus, it is most likely to be on a surface such as a doorknob. The best protection from SARS in public places is to wash your hands frequently and avoid touching your eyes and nose. I've got 5 pages of references. I'm not going to read them all. So as hazmat NCO, I issued a variety of masks and respirators for different environments and threats, whether it was dust, petrochemicals, organic solvents, and others. And I'm going to use as an example asbestos removal, which we did. The safety equipment is a Tyvek oversuit with gloves and booties with positive seal, or they are taped closed. A respirator has multiple filters down below 1 micron. Your entire body is encased. There's a fit test before you put on the mask. If you can smell the test material, your mask is not properly sealed. The entire room or building is wrapped in tapes and plastic with heavily filtered air intake for the workers. When you're done for the day or for the job, the suit and gloves are sealed with the debris and sent for hazmat disposal. The sheeting is sprayed with coagulant, sealed and sent for hazmat disposal. The masks are sealed in plastic and sent off-site for professional cleaning. With all that, there's always some level of contamination. Asbestos particles are about 1 micron. COVID virions are 100 nanometers or 10 times smaller. So if you're not wearing a better respirator than I was wearing, you're not getting any protection whatsoever. And if it does not have a NIOSH rating from the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, it doesn't filter anything. It's not even filtering dust. And at no point did I ever say, well, we don't have enough respirators, so just put a bandana over your face. That would have been a court-martial offense, and then the unit would have been fined by OSHA, the EPA, and possibly the FDA. And here we are, we're teaching the high school kids who might be going into the workplace where they'll be using personal protective equipment, and well, just put a bandana over your face. It does nothing. Now, I had an email exchange with Dr. Arkanoff, and he says there is no NIOSH rating required. So, the mask is not doing anything. And if this was being properly followed through, there would be waste disposal stations for biological waste for contaminated masks. I'm pretty sure there's not. There would be a contamination response plan if somebody got a contaminated mask onto a surface, onto another person, and I'm pretty sure there's not. And apparently this is going to be the whole year. The kids are expected to wear a mask over their face. So what happens next year or the year after that? When does this actually stop? I mean, they're not doing anything for every agency in the world, but they're supposed to wear them. And I ran the numbers this morning. The current statistical numbers under age 64, your odds of dying of COVID are 0.0055%, 55 ten-thousandths of a percent. Over age 80, it's fairly lethal. Under 64, it's negligible. Under age 24, it's 16 ten-thousandths of a percent. There were 452 deaths nationwide so far in that age group, against a total death count of 53,586 deaths. It's negligible. That's 84 ten-thousandths of the total of the kids who died. So, you know, apparently a lot of other parents are keeping their kids home because you're wanting our kids to wear masks. It's not actually helping them. It's going to be uncomfortable, and it doesn't actually lead to anything. When does it all end? And I've got 5 copies here that you can use for reference, including photos and sources.
Thank you for your statement.
And thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. I can't wear a mask because half my lung capacity is over there in San Diego.
That is the only person we had signed up for public comment, so thank you, Mr. Williamson, for sharing. We'll now move on to the consent items, and everyone's had the opportunity to take a look at the consent items. Is there any discussion necessary on the consent items? Hearing no discussion, do I have a motion?
I move we accept the consent items as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Russell and Mrs. Toomey. All those in favor of adopting the consent items, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Joe?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Mr. Alexander might be on.
Oh, Mr. Alexander, did you join us?
Aye.
Okay.
The ayes have
Aye,
it,
Mr. Daniel.
5-0. Thank you, Mr.
Aye.
Alexander. Let the record show that the consent items have been approved. We'll now move into our action items. Our first action item is a memorandum of understanding, which is going to be presented by Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Jason Taylor, this evening. Mr. Taylor, I'll turn the microphone over to you.
Daniels. Due to the COVID-19 closure at the end of 2019-20 school year, many of our staff members were unable to take planned personal and/or vacation time. Because of this, and the possible need for more leave time in 2021 related to COVID, we wanted to allow our staff members to carry over some additional personal and/or vacation time into this year. For support staff and admin, this is a pretty simple change, and we took care of that administratively at the rollover process on July 1st. However, for the teachers, we need to agree on a memorandum of understanding and submit it to the Indiana Employment Relations Board for their approval, because this will amend our collective bargaining agreement. We're bringing this MOU tonight for your approval. This MOU will allow teachers to roll 1 additional personal day from last school year into this year. This is not a change that would continue into future years, it's just a one-time change. We hope that the ERB board will approve this. If they would fail to, we would look at all other options to get this done in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Does anyone from the board have any questions or discussions relating to the memorandum of understanding?
Do you think this is happening in other school systems
Yes.
as well?
Yeah, we'll work on the language some with a couple other peers.
And probably the easiest way to handle it tonight is we'll take questions and conversation from the room, and then I'll specifically ask Mr. Hubbard and Mr. Alexander. So any other questions or comments from the room? Mrs. Toomey, do you have any questions?
No, I do not have.
Mr. Alexander, do you have any questions?
I'm assuming this has been approved by UTAG.
Yes, they've signed their part of this agreement.
Okay.
Mr. Hubbard?
Nothing further, Mr. Daniels.
I do not, Mr. President.
And I have no questions at this time either. Hearing no more questions or discussion, may I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the memorandum of understanding with UTAG as part of the 2019-2020 master teacher contract.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Russell and Mrs. Toomey. All those in favor in the room of the memorandum of understanding, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Hubbard?
Aye.
Mr. Alexander?
Aye.
5-0, the ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Does it require your signature?
I'll probably sign at the end. Yeah, just because everything. Too much going on. We now move on to a discussion and a request for approval as it relates to the revision to the school calendar. Once again, Mr. Taylor will be presenting.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Tonight, this evening, we're bringing one large change to our school calendar. Again, as related to the COVID-19 virus, we are requesting and recommending a change to the first student day from Tuesday, August 4th to Wednesday, August 12th. This will give us time to plan and prepare for our students' return. We were granted the use of performance qualified waiver days from the state of Indiana based off our high performance and prior year's achievement. This flexibility allows us to count our total instructional minutes, not just our total instructional days. And so that flexibility allows us to leverage these types of days for something like a shortened school year, giving our teachers more time on site to get prepared for students to be on site. And that's what we intend to use for these days. During these days, students will not attend school, but our staff members will. We plan to use this time and these additional days to accommodate the schedule and staff changes for more than 1,250 students who have chosen to attend virtually this school year, to provide staff time to learn and implement the safety procedures and precautions necessary to keep our students safe this school year, and to provide additional time for training to facilitate e-learning in a very high-quality fashion, even better than what we were able to pull off last year in a very short time frame. So prepare our students and our schedules and staff, and then also prepare for e-learning if necessary. That's the recommendation this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Do we have any questions within the room with respect to the requested schedule change?
Well, I'd just like to point out, even though with the changing the start date for the students, it is not changing any vacations at this time.
That's correct. These are days that we would not intend to make up at this time. We believe that they will position us to be rock solid as we move throughout the rest of the school year. Keep our calendar the same. It's only an adjustment from the front at this time.
Go ahead.
If we had to make changes, it comes back to the board, right?
Yes, 100%, sorry. Yes, great question. That would be definitely returned to the board for approval.
Mrs. Toomey, do you have any questions on the calendar?
I do not have.
Mr. Hubbard, do you have any questions on the calendar?
No, sir, I do not. Looks good.
Mr. Alexander, do you have any questions or comments?
No, sir, I do not.
I have a couple, and it's really a clarification. As we're dealing with teachers, as you said, this will give us time to be ready for virtual and in person by the 12th. And those teachers, those will be work days for those teachers, correct?
Yes, 100%.
What are we doing with respect to daycare and the like to try to help those teachers that also have school-age children?
We've already reached out to a strong partner of the corporation, Honeygrove, who operates our before and after school care, and they're making a camp available, and that will be discounted for our staff members on location. We want our teachers and staff present. There is important content for them to learn, and we know, especially in our classrooms, our teachers need to organize the physical space differently. So we expect and we hope that they'll be here all of these days, and we will have quite a bit for them to learn more here.
Great. And I know Marion County just, on my drive down here, said that no one's starting till August 12th in Marion County. So our change is actually consistent with what Marion County just decided to do today, correct?
Yes, that's correct. We saw many of the schools pushing back from July to the first week and then going beyond, and we felt like this is very appropriate given our current schedule.
And why 1 week?
We felt like that was enough time. We do need some time, 10 days is a lot. It's a big impact on a semester. At this point, we have not changed the semester length. It would still end at the end of the calendar year. And so we did not want to take it down to like a 70-day semester and then have a 90-day. So this really helped us, some equity in the two semesters.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Does anyone have any follow-up questions or comments based upon the questions or comments that have been made?
I do. I got one question, Jason.
Yes.
Just for the parents listening in or the ones that are there, can you kind of explain the difference of what, between the e-learning we had in the spring compared to the new e-learning, the differences in the two?
Yeah, so as you'll recall, in the spring, we did a model of, we used 2 waiver days and then we went to 3 e-learning days. We hope that we did that so our teachers had time to prepare. We hope that by building their skill sets and making them strong e-learning teachers if needed, that we could extend that beyond the 3-day week. If that would unfortunately happen, then we would have to move to e-learning.
Plus the e-learning day will be longer
The e-learning day is longer, great question.
compared to last spring.
Last year, we really, it was, okay, let's get through this, let's get to the end of the year. And instructional time was greatly minimized to get through that. We will be extending that. It'll feel more like a full learning day for students this year.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any other questions or comments?
I just want to make sure the parents are aware that the ones that signed up for e-learning, it's a different animal this fall versus in the spring. It's going to be a lot more ask upon the students and the parents.
Very true. We're really increasing that rigor.
And just for clarification too, I think part of the distinction today is we have virtual versus traditional. So the virtual is what we're referring to. And then if some bad event were to occur where someone would shut us down, then the traditional would do what?
Would become e-learning.
Okay.
Virtual will
Virtual
still
stay
stay
virtual.
online.
Jason, is the microphone on?
It is.
Got
Not
an
hearing me
email
well?
from someone watching, they can't hear. the
How's
mic.
that? Is that probably a little bit better? We'll turn that this direction.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you.
Mr. Arkanoff.
Jason.
Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing no more questions or comments, may I or do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the 2022, that's all right? Nope, I'm on the wrong one.
2021.
2021 school calendar revision as presented.
Too many 20s in there.
Well, I got one ahead.
Can I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Russell and Mrs. Toomey. All those in the room in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Hubbard?
Aye.
Mr. Alexander?
Aye.
5-0, the ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I don't think you're going to sit down for a while.
After this one.
And now we're moving on to the recommendation from the administration as it relates to the 2022-2023 school calendar. I'll turn the microphone over to Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. Last October, we actually brought school calendars to the board for approval. We brought those in a batch of a 5-year time period. The board really felt more comfortable with just approving 3, given the unknown. If only we knew what we knew now in October, right? So we're going to try to talk about a bright spot that in 2022-23, we would definitely be back to a consistent school year calendar. And so I'm bringing that for approval tonight. It's a direct copy. The only thing that's changed are the dates because of the different calendar days that may fall in that year. We would still maintain the 1 week for fall break, the 1 week for Thanksgiving break, 2 weeks for a winter break, and 2 weeks for a spring break. This gives our parents, especially our international families who maybe travel home for the longer breaks, a chance to plan those trips out ahead. And so we like to give them a good year or two warning on when we're going to have these breaks, and that's what this does tonight. It lets parents plan up through the end of the 22-23 school year.
Any questions or comments?
Any questions or comments from anyone in the room with respect to the 2022-2023 proposed schedule? Mr. Hubbard, do you have any questions or comments?
No, sir.
Mr. Alexander?
No, I'm good.
I guess my only question and comment is I remember we talked about a 5-year and we thought it was doable. We rolled it back to 3, and unfortunately we're in the situation we're in right now. So I do appreciate your effort and the efforts of the administration to present a calendar a ways out. And if one thing we've learned in the last 6 months is we will be flexible.
Keeping our fingers crossed.
With that being said, do I hear a motion?
Mr. President, I now move that we approve the 2022-2023 school calendar as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Russell and Mrs. Toomey. All those in the room in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander?
Aye.
Mr. Hubbard?
Aye.
The ayes have it, 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My mouse died, so I'm having to use the manual here, so if I'm a little slower, I apologize in advance. Always check the battery before you show up, right? Next, we're going to have a discussion with respect to the first reading of,
No, you have the trust.
I'm sorry, authorizing a lease with White River Township trustee. And Dr. Long will make the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Tonight, we are asking the board to approve a resolution allowing us to enter into a lease agreement with the White River Township trustee for approximately 1/3 of the building. For that space, we will pay 1/3 of the cost of the utilities. And at this time, we haven't finalized our plans on how we'll utilize the space. Will probably either be used as office space or storage space. The lease would start on September 1st of 2020 and can be canceled with 90-day written notice by either party.
Thank you, Dr. Long. Do I have any questions or comments from anyone in the room? Any questions or comments from either Mr. Hubbard or Mr. Alexander?
I guess more of a comment than a question at this point. So,
Mr. Alexander, if you can hear me, we couldn't hear you, so we just lost him.
Quick vote.
I hope we recorded that, and I really hope that shows up in the minutes.
Pam, help me out.
Let's give him a second to, and I'll just ask a couple of preliminary, or just basic questions. We talk about splitting the cost of utilities in like 1/3.
Yes.
Will we have approximately 1/3 of the building?
Yes, just about.
And the building is pretty much within our campus, so it's a convenient place if we're gonna lease any space for us to use to put.
Right, we're real familiar with that. I kind of grew up over there, so it's like moving back home.
And we gain parking spots.
Have we tried to see if we can connect again, or is he, no?
He hasn't tried.
I guess the other issue is if he could text his question. Technology, when it works, is great.
You want to text your question? He asked you to cut him off, I said, Bill.
All right, now that we have Mr. Alexander's question. We only gave him one, right?
That's right. You already used his one question.
That's right. I'm not sure he's getting connected again. His texts are green. Oh, no, that's because Joe's on.
Well, let's let the record reflect that Mr. Alexander unfortunately lost his connection and is not with us for the meeting right now. If he is able to re-find his connection, we can allow him to participate from there, but I think we'll just go on with 4 of us. Mr. Hubbard, do you have any questions or comments as it relates to White River Township Police? If I already asked you, I apologize.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the resolution authorizing the lease between Center Grove and White River Township.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Hubbard?
Aye.
Mr. Alexander, did you rejoin us?
He has not. He said move on.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to assume he hasn't rejoined us. If someone knows that he has, I don't have that technology app, just let me know. Let the record reflect, the ayes have it, 4-0, the resolution passes. Thank you, Dr. Long.
Thank you.
Now I'll move on to the first reading of a proposed policy revision. And Dr. Long, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay, just as a reminder, there is no vote tonight. These are just the first readings. We have 2 policies that we would like to present to the school board. One is student face coverings, and that's a new policy, 5511.1. Just kind of some of the highlights since the governor's announcement yesterday. We changed a little bit of the reading and talked about adding that as directed by the state or county health departments, so we know we're following somebody that's above us. The rest of the policy is what we've sent out to you. It hasn't changed anything. We have worked on administrative guidelines for the administrators to implement and enforce the policy. And once the board approves that, we'll share those with the administrators in the buildings.
Thank you, Dr. Long.
Sir, may I comment?
Public comment already occurred, sir.
It's one note. The Attorney General says the governor's order is unconstitutional, so that is not yet final.
Sir, the public comment time has passed.
Okay.
I do have one question.
Yeah, do we have any questions or comments?
So we're doing this along with what is coming down from the governor situation, so we update our handbook. Miracle of miracles, 3 months from now, this whole thing's gone. Okay, do we have to come back and pull that out? Or because it's the ultimate, we just don't practice it? I mean,
No, we would ask you to change the policy,
You'd have to come back
but
and
to drop the policy, it doesn't take 2 readings, it's just the board's decision.
okay. So we just have to.
And we've tried to make it as flexible as possible to follow the ever-changing directions that we get, either from the CDC or the governor.
Okay. I'm just trying to see, so there's not confusion about how we're gonna keep from that.
Sure.
Things keep changing.
Any more questions within the room? Mrs. Toomey, do you have any questions?
I do not at this time.
Mr. Hubbard, do you have any questions as it relates to, and I believe there were 2 policies. Are you covering both?
Do you want me to go ahead and do the second one, or do you want to finish
Let's do them one at a
discussion
time.
on- Okay.
Let's do one at a time. Do you have any questions as it relates to the mask policy, Mr. Hubbard?
I do not.
Mr. Alexander, do you have any questions as it relates to the mask policy?
I do not. We seem to be in line with the CDC, the WHO, and the governor's recommendation from his press conference yesterday. So I think we need to proceed forward.
My only comment is I understand masks are a controversial and political issue at this time in this country, but when our governor comes out and tells us to wear it, we're going to wear it. When we sit down and we listen to advice from both sides, but ultimately if a directive from above comes down, CDC tells us to wear it, hoping that this is what curbs this virus, I'm in favor of it. So bear with us, folks. We're doing the best we can. Please, please practice with your children wearing masks over the next couple of weeks so they don't show up the first day and all of a sudden that's the first time they've had a mask on. That's all I have to add. Any other comments or questions?
Nope.
There's nothing to vote on today.
I agree.
Correct.
So could, now I believe you have a second policy?
Our second policy is just an update to our current attendance policy, 5200, to be able to track our students that are in a virtual learning environment. We want to add the words to the first paragraph where it says the board recognizes that the presence in the classroom, and this part is the new part, and in the virtual learning environment enables the student to participate in instruction class discussions. So we want to be able to track our attendance. We're required to track our attendance in a virtual setting. We made this where we'll be able to do that also in whether we're in an e-learning setting or a virtual learning setting. Part of the attendance policy will say in order to be in full attendance with the Center Grove Community School Corporation, a student must log into the learning management system, and for example, right now it's Canvas, each instructional day as identified or as defined by the approved academic calendar. And then, excuse me, sir, can you please, I'm trying to make a presentation. So, and then attendance is monitored daily through the Canvas attendance report. Those are the new parts. Also, we added a part for COVID-related absences. It reads, students will not be penalized for COVID-related absences. For example, if a student tests positive for COVID-19 and is absent for 10 days, then those students will not be considered an unexcused absence. Basically, the key is the communication between parents and the school to determine the reason for absences and to work through a return to school plan with the student. So those are the only changes that we've made to our existing attendance policy.
Thank you, Dr. Long. Any comments or questions from within the room?
Both those policies, first reading, second reading, be next month, and then you'll vote on those policies.
Thank you. Any comments or questions during the first reading? Mr. Hubbard or Mr. Alexander, any comments or questions?
No, sir.
Not this time. Thanks, Bill.
I just want to thank you, Dr. Long, for being so agile as things change daily, and keeping us ahead of the curve the best we
And
can.
if we're required to change it before next reading, we'll bring that back to the board with any changes.
Let's hope not. Thank you, Dr. Long. Seeing that we don't need to vote on the policies today, let's move on to the next agenda item. Next is approving the 2020-2021 student handbook revisions. And I see Dr. Long, you're going to stay up here with us.
I'll be here for a little while. So a few months ago, when we asked the board to approve changes to the student handbooks, we mentioned that we might be back depending on what happens and with some direction from higher authority. So tonight, we're asking the board to approve 2 changes to the handbooks. The first one is for the high school only. Like the middle schools, they want to require all students to wear their student IDs, especially with masks being worn. This is going to be really critical for safety reasons to be able to identify our students. This matches the same approval or the same wording that the board approved at the, I think it was 2 board meetings ago for the middle schools. The second change is related to the first reading of board policy concerning face covering. It mirrors the policy that I just read to you. It talks about that we're going to provide 2 washable face coverings to students free of charge, and then how and when we expect them to wear those.
Thank you, Dr. Long. Do I hear any questions or comment as it relates to the proposed revisions to the 2020-2021 student handbook revisions?
Just, I didn't catch it. Lanyards for the high school students and 2 middle schools.
You've already approved the 2 middle schools to wear lanyards. This is just for the high school, for their IDs.
Not elementary.
Right,
Okay.
correct.
Any other questions or comments in the room? Mr. Alexander, Mr. Hubbard, any questions or comments?
No, my only comment is I think this is a good practice anyway, so I hope this practice continues even as we get over, having to wear a mask. I think especially at the high school and middle school, the kids ought to be able to wear their IDs all day.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Mr. Hubbard, any questions or comments?
No, not at this time.
Do I hear a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve revisions to the 2020-2021 student handbook as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Hubbard?
Aye.
Mr. Alexander?
Aye.
The ayes have it, 5-0.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
I think you're still up here, aren't you, Dr.
Yes, sir.
Long? You need to catch up?
No, I have to pull up a separate thing.
Okay, tell me when you're ready.
Yeah. so you-
Give us a moment for a technical.
so you can hear the script is shooting.
Okay. We good? There have been 2 1028 hearings noticed for this evening. I will now open up the first hearing as it relates to a determination and hearing resolution relating to a project at Sugar Grove Elementary School. And as part of this, this is the second hearing on this issue. So I will turn the floor over to Dr. Long, and I think Dr. Gabriel's
Yeah,
also joining.
Thank you. Yeah,
correct?
Dr. Gabriel has a piece of this as well. This presentation hasn't changed from the one we gave on June 18th. Just to remind everybody, Sugar Grove was built in 1996 and hadn't been renovated since then. We typically try to renovate around year 20, no later than year 25, and we're 24 years after opening now. So we've met with, our architects have met with the administrators and teachers of Sugar Grove and identified the needs. This is a list of groups of people that they met with and identified the needs. Thank you. Some health and safety issues, stewardship, and academic growth. We divided all of the categories, or all of the issues into 4 different categories, the 4 categories that you see here. As you know, and we talked about the new subdivision at Olive Branch and Mullinex Roads, where they're going to plan to build 197 new houses. As the sewer work for Greenwood community progresses, we see more and more people coming forward wanting to do new construction. We've been approached 3 times by about some property that we own in the northern part of the district, so we know there's only going to be continued growth there. There are we will not be able to fix everything that we identified in this one project, but here's what we can do without increasing the taxes. We can make multiple added features to enhance safety and security in the building, renovate the classrooms to meet the Center Grove's learning space standards. They will match what we've done at Walnut Grove and what we've done at at Center Grove Elementary and North Grove Elementary, and that's our goal, is to do that in each and every one of our elementaries, so they have the same standards in all those. We would reclaim the gym space for the LGI and then add a gym. We can do all of that without, and maintain the current tax rate for White River Township. Some of the added safety features, additional security barriers, additional surveillance, video surveillance, and additional door monitoring. And just to give you an idea, just a refresher of the map, it shows what we're going to do. The areas in the kind of the purple shade are the lighter purple are the areas that we're going to renovate. The darker purple to the far right are new additions. And I guess so, yeah, those are the new additions. And then the gym and the old gym and cafeteria and office space will also get renovated as well. To talk about the funding tonight, Dr. Gabriel will present how the actual funding costs, the budget, and some other required information.
And like Dr. Long, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because this is basically unchanged since the last presentation we made at the last board meeting. This slide shows the total cost of this project to be $15,900,000. This slide, I know it's a lot of fine print, includes the required information that we're required to present about the funding and the bonds. One question that was asked is what was the interest rates, and we have made all our projections on a very conservative interest rate of 4%. Right now, if we sold these bonds today, it would probably be closer to 2%, which would of course reduce the cost. And so we'll just have to see what happens, but I think we've been very conservative in that area. And the important part about this, as it says at the bottom, is that this the payment for these bonds would not increase the overall tax rate because we have other debt that's going away. We talk about our tax rate being level and not impacted by this project. This shows the tax rate that we've had, a very level rate going back to 2009. And we also like to compare ourselves to the other schools in the county, and this shows that comparison. This slide includes some new information in terms of what's going to happen next. Tonight, the board's going to approve a hearing or a 1028 hearing resolution. At least we hope you will. We'll be asking you to do that in a moment. Then next week, we will publish a notice which begins a 30-day waiting period, and during that period, the public can make an objection to the project. After that waiting period is over, the architects will start work on finalizing the plans. We expect bids for the work to be approved by the board next spring. And this project is going to take a while. Work on this phase planned to be completed in the summer of 2023. And the first payment on these bonds will be made sometime in late 2022 or in early 2023. So, oh yeah, and just to let you know, I know the board likes us to do this. We have Mr. Jeff Quackenbush with us. He's our bond counsel. If you have any difficult questions, we always refer those to him. So with that, I'll turn the the hearing back over to Mr. Daniels for public comment.
Thank you, Dr. Long and Dr. Gabriel. This is the appropriate time for members of the public to comment on the Sugar Grove Elementary Building Project or information presented this evening. Are there members of the public who would like to comment on what's been presented relating to the Sugar Grove Building Project?
So, Dr. Long.
Excuse me, Mr. Russell, this is for public. We go
Oh,
next.
sorry.
Seeing no public comment, I now close the public hearing. Now I will ask, starting with Mr. Russell, are there any questions from the board relating to the Sugar Grove project?
So are we to assume without this project, we're going to have a lot more, what I affectionately call condos at the schools?
We are in the process of installing a portable classroom that actually holds 4 different classrooms. What we've seen in the past is growth really from the Gables, the new apartment complex behind Target, but our special needs preschool program that we're required to have has grown tremendously in the past few years. And I think they currently occupy 6 or 7 of our classrooms that are in Sugar Grove right now. So what that does is it forces us to put portable buildings in and then move some of our kids outside. So this will relieve that stress that we have and keep all of our students and staff inside.
And I understand it does not raise taxes. The next 2 years, we just don't know what's going to be happening with budgetary things. So I am concerned about the mountain of deficit we have, debt to get paid off. But it's also my understanding that if need be, before the project got started, we can pull it. There is a way of doing it.
We can always not accept any of the bids.
Right.
So, you still have one more fallback. But I'd like to point out that our enrollment, and I know this is a crazy time, but right now our enrollment's still up from last year, so we haven't seen anything noticeable yet. So we feel like we've got the plan because of the length of the project that we talked about, this being almost a 3-year project. We can't just build a building in a real short period of time. So we need to plan as if the students are still coming, and so far as of this morning, they're still coming here and more than we had last year.
Thank you.
Mrs. Toomey, do you have any questions or comments?
I do not at this time.
Mr. Hubbard, any questions or comments?
No, sir, not right now.
Mr. Alexander, any questions or comments?
No, sir.
I just have a couple of comments. I guess first thing I want to say is that I understand this building is overdue for renovations. And I know that's part of your presentation, Dr. Long, and we try to do the best we can as public stewards to refurbish our buildings on a schedule which makes sense to not raise the tax rate. And I'm impressed also by this plan, as Dr. Gabriel tells us, that this, with other debt rolling off, is the time to do it, because we're doing this without increasing taxes. So I appreciate not only the two of you, but the whole school administration for working the best they can to make these things happen without increasing taxes. So thank you for those efforts, and share that with your teams.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing no additional
Well
questions.
said, Mr. Daniels.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Alexander.
I said, well said, Mr. Daniels.
Oh, thank you. Did anybody record that? Scott, you're getting more of a hard time not being here than you are when you're usually here. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks.
But no, I do appreciate it. With all that being said, I guess, hearing no more questions or comments, do I hear a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the resolution approving the 1028 preliminary determination, reimbursement, and relevant matters for the Sugar Grove Elementary renovation project.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Toomey and Mr. Alexander. All those in the room in favor, please, actually, let's just all do this together. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Hubbard? I'm sorry, I didn't. All those opposed?
Nay.
Let's show the vote as 4-1. Thank you, everyone. Let's now move to the next item on the agenda.
It's still
Yeah,
us.
so the next agenda item would be the project for Pleasant.
Right. This evening's been advertised as a second hearing on a 1028 preliminary determination relating to the Pleasant Grove project. I now open this public hearing and would like to hear from Dr. Long to introduce a presentation about the project, financing, and actions we're taking this evening.
Thank you. At our last board meeting on June 18th, we introduced the project to the board and to the community. Tonight is our 1028 hearing. Just to kind of quickly review, this is the same presentation that we made on June 18th. However, Pleasant Grove is a little bit older than Sugar Grove is. Pleasant Grove is 33 years old since we've opened it. We did some additional work, some addition work and some renovation in 13-14, but it's time to renovate the rest of the building for the finishes. To identify those needs, Mr. Kelly met with all of his departments that we listed up there, and then he shared his meeting request, our meeting notes with our architect. And those really came down to two different categories, the stewardship and facility improvement, similar to the same thing that we talked about. Our goal is to renovate buildings before we hit the 25-year mark, and we're well past that for Pleasant Grove. We talked about the new growth in that neighborhood or in that area. The subdivision at Olive Branch and Mullinex has 197 homes planned there. So we need a little bit of space. We also know as Greenwood Sewer Project progresses, there will be increased new construction in that area. So we want to add on a little bit to Sugar Grove to accommodate some growth in the north. Some of the renovations that we'll do, again, this, like Sugar Grove, we'll do as much as we can. We can't quite cover everything, but what we can do without increasing the taxes is to renovate every single classroom so those learning spaces meet the same standards that we have throughout the corporation. Includes new cabinetry, furniture, new paint, carpet, ceilings, lighting, not classroom furniture, but because we already did that. And then we can also do that by maintaining the current tax rate. So if you look at the next slide, it shows you the 4 classroom addition in the light green in the lower left-hand corner. Those are where we'll add on. Everything in the light blue or purple are the classrooms that'll be renovated. The orangey colors are the areas that we touched back in 13-14. So that shows you what our plans are, and Dr. Gabriel will walk you through the financing part.
Thank you, Dr. Long.
Again, there's very little new that's here to talk about that we didn't discuss at the last board meeting. This slide shows the total cost of the renovation project for Pleasant Grove. It will be $5.17 million. And then in addition to this, there's really 2 projects here. There's a second project, which we talk about as the multi-facility miscellaneous projects. We've been discussing this with the board for a number of months about the need to do various safety and security upgrades and HVAC improvements and roof replacement, concrete repairs. So this will be an additional bonded amount of $1.3 million that we're doing at the same time. Again, we include for the record the tax rate slide that you've seen earlier, and also the comparison with Johnson County other districts that you've seen earlier. In terms of the next steps, tonight we're asking the board to approve 2 resolutions, a resolution approving the 1028 preliminary determination, sell bonds and related matters, and a resolution approving the additional appropriation and related matters. After this evening, assuming you approve these projects, the architects will finalize the plans. Bids for the Pleasant Grove projects will be approved by the board sometime next spring, and work on this phase of the project at Pleasant Grove is planned to be completed by the fall of 2022. First payment on these bonds should be made in 2021. So with those comments, I'll turn the public hearing back over to Mr. Daniels.
Thank you both. Thank you, Mr. Gabriel, or Dr. Gabriel. I just demoted you, and it was only
It's okay.
unintentional. You both earned it. I need to be more careful with my language. This is appropriate time for members of the public to comment on the Pleasant Grove Elementary Building project or the information presented this evening. Are there members of the public present who would like to comment on the Pleasant Grove renovation project? Seeing no one from the public standing up for comment, I now close the public hearing. I now ask, are there any board members who have any comments or questions relating to the Pleasant Grove renovation project? Seeing none from the room, do I have any from Mr. Hubbard or Mr. Alexander remotely?
No, sir.
Mr. Hubbard?
No, sir.
I will only echo what I said before and only give Dr. Long a little bit of a hard time for using the word orangey. I'm not sure it's a real word, but I knew what you meant because it looked, that looks yellowy.
But it says orangey.
But with that being said, once again, being able to do it without raising taxes and knowing that the building is overdue for renovations, thank you and your team for getting both those things accomplished. I now ask, seeing no more comment, if I hear a motion.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the resolution approving the 1028 preliminary determination to sell bonds and the resolution approving the additional appropriation and related matters for the Pleasant Grove Elementary renovation project.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Toomey and Mr. Alexander. Hearing a motion and a second, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay?
The vote's 4-1. The resolutions pass. Thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
We now move to other business. And I'll start with Mrs. Toomey. Do you have any other business to share with the board or the public this evening? And thank you for coming, Mr. Quackenbush. We appreciate your help.
I have no comment.
Mr. Russell, do you have any comments?
Just real quickly, unfortunately, the foundation had to cancel the annual gala that we had. They moved it to August, but as we've all seen, it just wasn't gonna work for the numbers we usually have attend the gala. Alumni and Friends has been kind of on hold, but we did have a major archive donation from the Dorothy and Joe Clemens family. Many yearbooks and other
That's
things
fabulous.
throughout the years, because they were long-term staff members, teachers, as well as their kids went here. So
I
that was
remember
a great-
both of them when I went here.
Yeah, it was
Wonderful,
your
wonderful,
timeframe, yeah.
wonderful people.
So that was a great thing to receive from that.
Thank you. Mr. Hubbard, do you have any comments or updates tonight?
No, sir, I don't.
Mr. Alexander?
None this evening, Mr. President.
Mr. Arkanoff?
Thank you.
Dr. Arkanoff, once again, I demoted you. I apologize.
I just want to take a moment, first of all, to thank Dr. Henderson and all of the high school team for a great graduation and good work, guys. Really very much appreciated that we got that off the ground and in the books. So thank you so much. You all know how much hard work that was to happen in right up until literally the last second. So fantastic job. Thank you, guys. I also want to take a moment and recognize everyone on the Superintendent's Council who is sitting here today, Superintendent's Advisory Council, everyone out in the audience, Mr. Taylor, Dr. Henderson, Dr. Long, Dr. Gabriel, Mrs. Hoover, and of course, Mrs. Conrad. They have been working like crazy on everything that's been going on. And I just appreciate everything that you've all done and all of your teams and the great work that they're doing to get this school year off the ground. And I know it's going to be, it's gonna be great. We're gonna have a good year, regardless of all this other stuff. So thank you for everything that you're doing, and I really appreciate your hard work in supporting the school district.
I'd just like to add on the graduation, kudos to the kids, because they came into practice with, as you said, many changes going on just the night before, and behaved themselves, but followed directions, and same thing with graduation morning. Again, there were many changes that happened the night before, and the kids followed through, so kudos to them, because they already had their diplomas, and we had, what, almost 500?
Something like that,
Yeah. Yeah, out of a class of 6-something,
right?
return when they didn't have to, so that just showed the strength of that class.
I would echo that.
Thank you.
Dr. Arkanoff, anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's it, thank you.
And I think it goes without saying, I think it's very well stated about graduation and the Superintendent's Advisory Council. But Dr. Arkanoff, thank you, because I know you've had a lot of sleepless nights as to whether we're going to have a graduation, as to what the first semester is going to look like. So you and your team, kudos. I don't know the public knows what you've all put into it, but you've given your heart, your soul, your grit to get us here. So give us some grace, folks. We're going to make it through this first semester. We're going to be stronger on the other side. With that being said, do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
So moved.
Actually, hold on, I forgot 2 announcements. Can I revoke that?
We haven't voted.
Just a reminder that on August 26th, the star attraction, Dr. Arkanoff, will be at a virtual coffee chat. I hear we had over 1,000 people last time.
We did, and we'll probably do an ad hoc one here before then, but that's the scheduled one.
Okay, so keep your eyes open for another one. If you can participate in those, great. I also got questions from folks that said we hit the 1,000 limit, they couldn't get in. Realize we put those on the website. You can watch them anytime at your convenience. So please, 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 very informative. Dr. Arkanoff and his team get on there and provide valuable information for everyone. And then my last announcement is our next regularly scheduled board meeting is August 27th at 7 p.m. Now that I've messed up the order, now I'll ask, can I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Can I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Russell and Mrs.
Second.
Toomey. That's a third by Mr. Alexander. So we're only taking 2, Scott, sorry. Little late. We're adjourned.
Thank you, folks.
We didn't vote.
All right. So you've got stuff to sign
Yeah, I
in
just.
there and everything.